Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 130. I think we're at already. That's awesome. Episode 130 of Sleep and Relax ASMR. This episode is titled What's in a Name? So, this is a totally new concept for the show that I really wanted to try out. I'm basically going to discuss random subjects, and it's going to get weird, and I'll start telling a story, and I won't finish it. I'll quickly change it up. The point is just to keep you distracted, to not allow you to get really settled in, and it becomes disorienting to the point where you just kind of fall asleep or doze off. So, it's really just a random collection of sentences and stories that aren't necessarily interrelated, and sometimes what I've found that when sort of listening back to my episodes or listening to other ASMR content, when it's very linear, you're almost lingering on each word or each sentence, and so it kind of forces you, whether you want to or not, to pay attention. But if an episode is not really making sense or not really bothering to connect the dots, I think it becomes easier for us to sort of take a back seat and just kind of fall asleep or relax or let go for a little bit. So new concept on the show. Hopefully you guys like it. And we'll start off with what's in a name. So there's some names that I like and some names that I love. I can't say I hate any, really. What's to hate in a name anyways? For some reason, there's some names that I find fun to say, and some that sound a little strange, really, in my head at least. There's some names that evoke happy memories, and others that remind me of specific stories in my mind. And I wonder why it is that some names stick out to me more than others, and why I like some others a little more than comparable names. A name like Alex, right? It's alright, it's common, but why is a name like Paul common and I seem to gravitate towards it? It kind of reminds me of Paul, who was the brother of a really good friend of mine in high school. He was a cool guy. He ended up thinking he was cooler than his brother, or I ended up thinking he was cooler than his brother at least. So I kind of stopped hanging out with his brother. I wonder if Jerry's upset by that. But Jerry's not a bad name either. It's kind of nice and has a friendly ring to it, don't you think? His real name was Gerard, but I just called him Jerry. Can't really remember why I started doing that. Why not G? Why not Ger or Jer? Why Jerry? I don't know. That was high school. It was just kind of a different time. Jerry's the only friend I had who I give a nickname to. I gave a nickname to that wasn't really close to his name. I had Fred, which is what I exclusively called him, but his name was Frederick, so it was kind of a no-brainer. Kevin was Kev, Edward was Ed, Timothy was Tim. There's just a pattern of shortening names by a couple letters. What's up with that, really? Shortening names by a couple letters anyway. If you think about it, Fred isn't that much more difficult to say than Frederick, or it's not that much easier to say than Frederick. It's kind of lazy. It's really lazy, actually. I would say that Daniela was the laziest one in school. She didn't really try very hard, and I never really understood it. She didn't seem to like anyone either. Neither did Georgina, actually. I remember one day Georgina's mother came into the school to complain that kids weren't speaking to her daughter. And it was odd because it wasn't that we stopped talking to her on purpose. It was just one of those things that people were just focused on their own stuff. It's high school, and they didn't think to actively go by and say hi to Georgina every day. So anyway, Georgina was pretty friendly. Michelle was friendlier, and Will was definitely the friendliest. Will was so friendly that he was just an angel. He was the kind of guy that you could trust to do exactly whatever he said he was going to do. But Will wasn't very good at basketball, and that became frustrating at times. He had this move where he would fake a pass by looking one way and then immediately passing in the other direction. And it worked the first 2 times on opposing defenders, but by the 3rd time they would inevitably just steal the pass and score on the other side. But he played good defense and tried hard, but he could never quite learn how to make a pass without giving away exactly what he was going to do before. Eventually, our coach had to just put in Kevin in there, Which, again, why do I refer to him as Kevin whenever I'm speaking now and not just as Kev? As a matter of fact, I had coffee with him the other day, and I just decided to call him Kevin instead of Kevin. He gave me this weird look, like, as if I was calling him a different name, like, I don't know, Johnny. But I don't know. I just don't understand why it is I would call him Kev, and then as an adult, I decide to call him Kevin. As a matter of fact, Kev seems a little too childish. But that's totally subjective, and that makes no sense. Kev was good at basketball, actually. Dave was pretty good, too. He moved well for a guy's height. He had a good jump shot. But he could be uncoordinated. Not as uncoordinated as Chris. No one was as uncoordinated as Chris. He can barely tie his own shoes without stumbling over or breaking something. One time in Mr. Z's class, he walked into the lab and somehow managed to knock down and break all the beakers. Every single one of them. Rebecca laughed at him, but I felt kind of sorry, to be honest. But Rebecca could be a little mean at times and laugh at people when they were down, which wasn't nice in my opinion. But she was also very pretty, so she would just flirt with the smart kids and get their notes and homework and whatever suited it, whatever suited her flavor, whatever kind of suited her for the day. One day I told her I wouldn't give her my notes because I hated that she wouldn't say hi to me unless she needed something, and she just kind of rolled her eyes and walked away. We maybe spoke 8 words throughout the next 3 years of going to school together after that. And then she moved away somewhere, but I can't quite remember where. I want to say Wisconsin. But maybe if it's not Wisconsin, maybe she went to, maybe it was, I can't remember, North Dakota. I don't know. Well, I don't know where I'd rather live between North Dakota and Wisconsin. I don't really know much about either place. I assume both are kind of rural. I wonder if her name Rebecca was interesting in a place like Wisconsin. I don't know. I'm not saying it was. I'm just guessing, or I'm asking really. Whoever has the answer, that'd be nice. But going back to Chris and his clumsiness and breaking all the beakers in the lab, Mr. Z was in shock. He couldn't believe someone had broken all the beakers in class. Mr. Z's first name was Randall. I can never get over the fact it had 2 L's at the end of his name rather than 1. Chuck would write his name with 2 K's at the end of his name on exams as a sort of joke to Mr. Z, but I don't think he ever caught on. And to be quite honest, Chuck had this sense of humor that if you weren't really paying attention, you'd miss what the joke was. That's what was kind of interesting about Chuck, was just very subtle. Wouldn't really laugh a lot, but just definitely one of the funniest guys I went to school with. And it was just the kind of thing where, again, if you looked away or if you didn't really know what his kind of humor was, you definitely wouldn't pick up on it. So I don't think Mr. Z ever really understood what he was going for. That kind of brings me back to nicknames. Chuck. It wasn't his real name, but now that I think of it, I can't tell you what his real name was because I don't really remember. I can't think of his last name either. Nicknames are kind of funny in how they account for a person's identity and you forget it isn't the name that person wasn't given. But then what about Sanders? We only called him by his last name. But again, no one really knew why. His first name was Laramie. Maybe it's because he didn't like his first name. His brother also had an odd name too. It was Lars. Their family might have been from Norway or Sweden now that I think of it. I always liked the name Lars over Laramie. It was just so much easier and it didn't sound as nasally when I would say it. Linda would hold her nose together and say hi to Laramie as a joke because everyone agreed you couldn't say Laramie without saying it in this very nasally kind of obnoxious way. Laramie reminded me of Sam because they looked similar, except Sam was a little taller and Sam went to a different school. Samuel was his name, I suppose, but I never called him by his full name either. I don't think his parents did either. Samuel and Laramie would be part of a group I'd hang out with occasionally, and people would swear they were brothers, maybe even twins, but they weren't related, weren't from the same place, weren't from the same country. Which makes me kind of wonder, is it a rule that twins need to have the first letter of their names the exact same? I know sets of twins, all of which share the same first letter in their names. You have Erica and Eli, Mary and Mariah, Carlos and Carmen, all of them. I can't really think of twins that don't share the first letter in their names. Well, maybe Max and Charlie, so that rule isn't one that applies all the time, I guess. So I guess Max and Charlie kind of broke that rule, but I can't think of any other ones, and I can't even think of celebrities. Well, then again, how many twin celebrities do I do I kind of really think of off the top of my head? I'm doing this a cappella right now anyway. Laramie was much better at basketball than Samuel was. As a matter of fact, Sam, I don't even think played on the basketball team at his school, but Laramie was pretty tall, and even though I think Samuel was taller. Now I can't remember. Now I'm mixing up who was taller than the other because they looked the exact same. But Laramie had this thing where he would be able to dunk like once a week. It was very strange. It was only on Mondays, and it would have to be with a volleyball. He wasn't particularly athletic, but and Dave could dunk as well. He could dunk at least twice a week, whereas Laramie could only do it once. And maybe it was just something that would happen over the weekend that Laramie would go party, and then on Mondays he could dunk. But then he would try it again on Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays and Fridays, and it never quite worked out. Dave could dunk, just about every day, but again, usually it was just twice a week. Every other day he was a little too tired. His legs wouldn't really give him the proper lift that he needed. I could never dunk. I wasn't, tall enough. I think I was athletic, and I played basketball, but I would say I preferred volleyball. Melissa was very good at volleyball. As a matter of fact, she ended up getting a scholarship to play volleyball at a D1 school. Maybe it was in Wisconsin. Maybe that's where I'm getting the idea of Wisconsin. Melissa from Wisconsin. Not from Wisconsin, but living in Wisconsin. But I could be making that up. Just, it's been a few years since I haven't been in high school. It's been almost, 7 years at this point, 8 years. I wonder if Melissa, maybe I should Google her right after and see if she ended up playing in Wisconsin or if it was in California. I remember Bob went to California for school. Maybe it was UC Davis or UC Irvine. Maybe UCLA. Maybe Berkeley. I don't know. I think he wanted to study biochemical engineering or biomedical engineering, something of the nature. I couldn't really tell you. He was a smart kid, though. He was a smart kid. Bob was pretty smart. I'd say Johnny was pretty smart as well. Joshua was also pretty smart. I think Joshua was actually a valedictorian. Joshua would do this thing where he would get to school 2 hours early, go to the basketball court, and for some reason do homework the day it was due on the bleachers 2 hours before class started. And I remember asking Joshua, why didn't I call him Josh? Why was it Joshua every single time? Why is it that we pick nicknames when it's convenient and then... Because Joshua is a little shorter than Joshua and it's a little easier to say, so there I go. I'm kind of like... Almost everyone I would shorten their names, but with Joshua I wouldn't do that. I would just always call him... with Joshua I would never call him Josh. I would only call him Joshua. Maybe I called him Josh one day and he just decided to tell me that I should only call him Joshua, but I can't remember. But anyway, he would go to the bleachers and he would start doing his homework, and I would ask Joshua why he would do that. And he would just say that for some reason between 6 and 8 was sort of when he was most creative and could recall things the best. So he would just do his homework. He'd ask his parents to drop him off extra early, which was fine because they worked very early and had to be out of the house early no matter what. And he would just do his homework there. He was the only kid at school that would do that. Because I know that Ed sometimes would show up early as well, but that was because his mother worked at the school, and so he had to be there early. So he'd end up just playing volleyball, or slapping the ball against the wall, or shooting hoops for a little bit. I never got to school on time or early. It was always a matter of getting there a few minutes late, if anything. That was always a very consistent theme throughout school for me. But I always loved when brands, they use names as their name, right? I love Frank and Oak and Macy's. They just seem more human when they do that. I've never thought about, I haven't even bought anything from Frank and Oak, but I've spent a lot of time in Macy's over the years, and I was in Ralph Lauren buying a belt just last week. Maybe I just really liked the belt because it was Ralph Lauren, and I like brands that use real names in them. But then again, Nautica is a brand I like to wear occasionally. That's not a name. Most of the time I end up just buying whatever brand I find for a good deal. So I guess I'm being inconsistent because really it's not a rule that I have to buy brand names. As a matter of fact, most of the things I wear are brand names. So what am I talking about? Mr. Z would always wear these Tommy Hilfiger shirts. I remember he liked, maybe he just liked names for brands as well. He never showed up in anything except a Tommy Hilfiger shirt, actually. I would imagine his closet is just full of 20 or 30 of Tommy Hilfiger shirts. There's this food brand in Canada called No Name Brand. That's their actual name. I think they do exclusively food and canned items. Or maybe they do also home-related items. I think I saw them sell cups when I was at Loblaws visiting Canada. But what kind of name is that anyway? It is literally No Name Brand. But I think it's so silly that your brand name would be No Name Brand, as if they're just trying to hide it from the world. It was just jarring because their color is yellow, so you see this bright yellow sticker on it, on this item, and it would just read No Name Brand, cups or chicken or whatever it might have been. How does that make any sense? You're saying you're a no-name brand, and yet you have the flashiest, most obnoxious yellow color for your brand. It was just this black and yellow logo, just bland as all could ever be. And it was shocking how bright their branding was, and it was no-name brand. It's like the guy in the back of a room that doesn't want to be heard, and yet just starts yelling things occasionally so everyone can look back at. And then he or she gets very embarrassed when people look back. But it's like, hey, you're yelling in the back of the room. You're being like the no-name brand. Jack and Jones, that was a store in Canada. I once went in to buy jeans there. This girl that worked there was very helpful. Kristen, I think her name was. And well, I was looking for a new pair of jeans, and I was scanning the store when I find one pair of jeans that I thought would look great. And so I go and try them on, and as I'm trying them on, I ended up slipping in the changing room, and I split the pant in half. And so Kristen asked if I was okay. I sort of panicked because I didn't want to pay for ripped jeans, but I also didn't want to just leave them hiding there. So I went out and embarrassed, I told Kristen what happened. And she let me go without even a blink of an eye. And I think she was flirting with me, to be honest, so maybe that helped as well. But I just slipped. And I just ripped them right down the middle. Just right down the middle of the pant, and it was the only time I've ever done that, and I'm not very proud of it, but here I am sharing it with you, the listener, because you're my friend, I suppose. I hope you're my friend. I hope you don't criticize me too hard after this. You know, I always disliked the name Abercrombie & Fitch. It just seemed forced. Maybe I just didn't really, I guess I didn't fit their demographic, or maybe I just didn't like the name, so I didn't give them a chance, really. Fierce was the name of the cologne that my cousin bought me from Abercrombie & Fitch when I was 14 or 15. I used to wear it all the time and would get compliments. At least I think that was the name. I don't think it was. I didn't think it was that fierce. It just kind of smelled like a cocky little teenager. Not sure what kind of smell a cocky teenager gives off, but fierce is probably as close as what it would be, as if I can really think of it. Jerry had one from Davidoff that I always thought was nice, and Alyssa would always give him a hug whenever he was wearing it to school. I was tempted to switch over to the one Jerry would wear, but I never quite did it. I thought, if Alyssa's going to give Jerry a hug for the cologne he wears, would she really give me a hug because I'm wearing the exact same cologne? It kind of seemed a little false and a little faulty. I didn't think she'd really appreciate that. We were good friends too, Alyssa and I were, so maybe if I just asked her, she'd give me a hug no matter what. She would give me hugs all the time, actually. But I thought about it. I thought about doing that switch at one point, and again, never worked out. Tim wore one from Polo, Ralph Lauren. That was always really nice as well. That I thought was nice. But now that I think about it, I don't think Alyssa or Rebecca or anyone ever gave him a hug for wearing it. So maybe he was attracting the wrong demographic, or maybe it was a scent that men wore that men really liked and that women didn't really like. I don't know. It's fine. It's whatever floats your boat. I'm not saying one is correct and one is incorrect. It's just more of a random thought that's running through my head. Sometimes I wonder what impact a person's name has on them, Is someone named Ashley going to have a different perspective on life? Is someone named Alexandra or Kyle's predestined to be skater bros? So on and so forth. I wonder if that's a thought that's ever crossed your mind before I mention it now. I wonder if someone with the name Alyssa is going to choose a different path in life over someone named Marie. Is someone named Claude, born in the United States, going to have a different view on the world? I don't know. I don't know. And this is something that has definitely crossed my mind once or twice. The crossing of this has definitely occurred. I remember one time Billy crossed me over in basketball so bad that I actually twisted my ankle. And it was one of those moments that you feel so embarrassed because you've been victimized by, not victimized, that's a very strong word, but you feel You feel embarrassed. It almost feels like you're just naked out on the court and everyone's just kind of laughing at you, because Billy was really good at basketball. He was definitely the best basketball player. And it was just this vicious cross that, it's not exactly the crossing of the mind, but it's the crossing of, the basketball, and then you just kind of trip over yourself, and you embarrassingly just kind of trip over and fall, and that wasn't fun for me at the time. And if it wasn't going to be me, it was going to be someone else. I guess that's just the way it works. I remember one time I blocked him, and he didn't like that, and but we were always friendly within the team, But I wonder, is someone named Alex going to have a different life than someone named Bob? Is Bob going to be any different than Robert? Is Robert going to be... I mean, I guess Bob could be a Robert, really, right? Because Bob is the nickname for Robert, which I never quite understood, because why wouldn't you just go for Rob instead of just Bob? I mean, why are you changing the R to a B? There is no B in Robert aside from the B at the end of Rob. So if, why the switch from the R to the B? I just... Nicknames are just something that, obviously are subjective. You never know how they're going to come to be, but I digress. I've been digressing this entire episode. The main point of this episode was, what's in a name, right? Like, what happens? How does someone's name change their trajectory in life? What sort of path does someone's name encourage them to take or dissuade them from taking because of their name? That's really a question I have. I don't have any answers, of course. I'm just a guy behind a microphone just speaking and rambling. It's more just a thought for you to consider if you want. You don't have to. You really don't have to. It's really your call. But that's all I have to say about the topic. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed the concept of the episode. I had a really good time making this episode, just really random. If you're not asleep by now, well, if you're asleep, I guess you're not going to listen to this part of the episode. But if you think this is an interesting concept, let me know at hello at sleepandrelaxasmr.com. I plan on making maybe at least one more. I know it's different. I know for some of you it's not your flavor, but why not keep on mixing it up? Why not keep mixing it up? So that's the end of this episode. Thanks as always for listening, and take care.